Parenting a neurodivergent or special needs child is already a heavy lift, but what if some of that weight isn't even yours to carry? In today's episode, we're going to be unpacking that baggage and learning how to set it down. Welcome to the Parenting Pivot podcast. I'm Patrick, and if you are new here, this is a space for the parents of neurodivergent and special needs kids. If you find yourself nodding along, then you are in our tribe. Please subscribe so you don't miss future episodes and so that we can keep building this community together. To those of you who have been with us before, thank you really deeply and truly. Your presence is what makes this space possible. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Nanika Coor. She's a clinical psychologist and the host of the Project Parenthood podcast. Through her practice, Brooklyn Parent Therapy, she helps parents build deeper connections with their children by breaking cycles of intergenerational trauma. So if you're ready, let's dive in. Honest stories, expert guidance, the path redefined. Parenting Pivot. Dr. Coor, thank you so much for joining us. I think you are really going to help our audience, so I thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here to get to talk about this.
Many of us carry these unresolved experiences from childhood or from cultural expectations, and they can really creep into our lives. How do you help parents recognize when they're parenting from their past instead of the present?
Well, first of all, before I'm really even working with anyone, I'm really using a really comprehensive kind of intake. And then given like what they talk about and the challenges, their parenting challenges, I often try to slow them down, right? And sort of, what can you imagine, like what happens to in your body when you are having this parenting challenge? What thoughts go through your mind? And that's when we can sort of start bringing that awareness to what's happening internally for the person, for the parent in the challenging parenting moment can really give us some insight on like how much of that is your own voice talking and how much of that is like past voices and past expectations of you as a child.
We began to see her behavior as a form of communication, not misbehavior. So that shift helped us meet her compassionately and effectively. And it's helped us grow as parents a lot. Our daughter also has an intense emotional depth. Her sensitivity has taught us so much. The old school parenting that my husband and I were brought up with, which was much more iron fist and you behave a certain way. We had to learn a very, very different way to work with our child and meet her where she's at.
When a parent finds themselves yelling, blaming, or shutting down, what's really happening under the surface?
My first sort of like rule of thumb is like when you are activated at all, whether you're activated, because we're sort of activated on a spectrum. Like not every time we're activated does it feel like a 10. Sometimes it feels like a 1, right? And like the real empowerment comes when you can start detecting those 1s so that you don't end up at a 10. You know what I mean?
I tend to notice that somewhere between 8 and 10, so I think 2 would be better. That's good advice.
So it's sort of like act early, right? So as soon as you find yourself even just a little bit irritated, annoyed, overwhelmed, that's when you are going to try to do some intervention on yourself. You're not going to wait until you're up at a 10 because you're right. It's so hard to come back down once you're up there. But sometimes we'll say, I've asked my child to do that 7 times. And I'm thinking when you got to time number 2 is when you check in with yourself. How am I feeling? I've asked twice now. Like usually parents are a little activated by the second time they have to ask something. You know what I mean? And so that's a great time. When you're just activated a tiny little bit is a great time to check in and say, what's going on with me? First of all, checking that sort of halt. Am I hungry, angry, lonely, tired? Like, what's going on with me? You know what I mean? What's happening? Like, where's this anger coming from? Because there's sometimes when you ask twice, when a parent asks twice, and I'm fine at number 2. Like, I just got up, or I just had a good meal. Like, I just am up from a nap. Like, if I'm feeling well-resourced, the thing that makes me annoyed on another day may not make me annoyed today, right? So I might be very low level, irritated, just like lightly annoyed. And that's a great time to check in and say, like, what does annoyed feel like for me? Like, do my hands clench? Do my shoulders go up? Does the tone of my voice get different? Like, start noticing yourself, just having some awareness of what you sound like, what your facial expression might be, what your body posture might be. So it's sort of really taking those moments when you're not so incredibly activated and paying attention then when you do have more of your executive functioning online. That's one of the first things that I talk to parents about, like in a first session. There's a lot of psychoeducation, right, about what trauma is, how your nervous system works, right? And what your nervous system is doing in those moments. You know, we may have all heard that term fight, flight, freeze, and maybe even fawn, right? And these are all different states that your nervous system can be in that are outside of sort of what's understood as like the green zone or like the calm zone, or like that maybe mostly you and I are in right now, you know, where we can have conversations, we can remember something that somebody has told us, we could enact something new or practice something that we don't know well. And then when we are stressed in some way, distressed in some way, feeling threatened in some way, our brain doesn't have much thinking in it. It just has like automatic reactions in it. And that's what you're going to see when you're in fight mode, flight mode, freeze mode, or fawn mode. Fight mode might be the yelling, the shaming, the blaming, sometimes for parents, some hitting. With flight, you might just want to get out of there. That's when you walk out of rooms. That's when you are avoidant of something. You're trying to avoid what's happening in front of you by removing yourself, escaping it somehow. And then freeze is that shutdown you're talking about, that idea of like, maybe you get depressed. Maybe it's a feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, where you just don't feel like you can do anything. You feel sort of stuck. And then there's fawn, which is more like people pleasing. And with parents, this can look like giving up boundaries that you've set, not setting a boundary. So those are some ways of things that are happening in somebody's nervous system that can lead them to those behaviors that we are less proud of as parents usually.
Probably the mistake, if there's any, we'll call it a regret, but a lesson learned, is that probably, taking this real behaviorist approach of reward and punishment, we persisted in that for a while. And it didn't get us the results we wanted. I regret putting her through that because I think it was ineffective and it was probably stressful for her. You hope that your children will forgive you for the things that you tried to do right but didn't quite do right. Parenting, which is not always easy, is a tremendous opportunity to grow and learn things about yourself.
Can you share an example of a parent who realized in real time that they were parenting from the past instead of the present, and what changed once they saw that?
I can just talk about myself, really. There are some moments that where this became really clear for me. When my child was about between 3 and 4, that was probably my hardest time as a parent because my child was often in that red, yellow zone, and it was very challenging for me because I grew up with parents who were not comfortable with children in anything beyond the green zone. Right? Like if you're not in the green zone, you're basically in trouble. There's an parenting intervention called the circle of security. They have a concept called shark music. Imagine you're looking at like a beach scene and there's water and the beach, right? It's sunset, right? And they play this like sort of classical music and it's just like, oh, look, the beach. It's like so cute, And then they have the same shot, the same beach, but they play like the Jaws music. So there's this idea that with shark music playing in our minds, we are experiencing like something is dangerous, right? And so their need when my child is having a big tantrum might be like to organize their feelings, right? To organize their feelings with like care and connection. But that feels dangerous. It feels like what they are doing just needs to stop because it seems like a dangerous thing. And depending on where I am and what my shark music is telling me to do, I can, end up in any of those non-green zones of regulation, right? Which actually leaves my child's attachment need unmet. And when any of us have an attachment need that's unmet, we usually are going to then display more non-green behavior. Okay, so like it and actually makes the situation worse when we don't meet the child's need. But We don't always know that at the time. So at the time, my child is having a big meltdown, throwing blocks at me, and one hit me right in my mouth. I mean, I was like just seeing red. I just it all felt very wrong. So that's my shark music playing. Even before I had my child, really did not want to parent in that way. So I have my shark music telling me parent like your parents parented. And I have like my own voice saying, do not do that. And I think that's really what puts me in that freeze place. Cause it's like, well, then what do I do? Like all I know what to do is either, go the authoritarian route or like there's like a blank. I have no idea what else to do. Right. So oftentimes I did do nothing. Sometimes when I did nothing, it just gave myself a chance to just take a breath. It would be like, I'm not going to do anything, like, which means nothing harmful, maybe not nothing helpful too, but definitely nothing harmful. And I would just take a breath and I would just be like, let me just think for a second. And I would take myself out, right? Like take myself out of the room. I would tell my child, listen, like I'm getting very upset. I'm going to take a break and I'll be right back. And that's what I would often do when my child was a toddler. That's all I could think of to do was to remove me because I felt dangerous too. So I would remove myself a little bit and then I would like calm down, take a breath, and I would come back and then maybe I could talk about it. I don't like it when you throw things. You can be mad, but you can't throw things. And so like I would go back and be able to calmly have those conversations. And I did a lot of leaving rooms because I just didn't know what to do. And it took me a long time to like be able to both have something distressing happening to me and also calming myself down more simultaneously.
Parents, myself included, often realize that they have handled a moment badly. How can we all move forward without getting stuck in a vicious cycle of guilt and shame?
Now I just talk about my process out loud. I can feel myself getting really angry. I think we need a break, or like, I need you to like lower your tone. Otherwise we need to do this later. Like I can just like talk about what's going on for me now. But then I didn't have those words and I didn't quite know what to do. That's where for me, self-compassion comes in. And then it's another big part of my practice and the psychoeducation that I give to parents. After those situations, I talk a lot about parent-initiated repair and repairing with children when you have flown off the handle or done something that you're less proud of, or just handled something in a way that you just had wished you had done differently, to be able to circle back to your child later. My parents could tell me they were sorry about something they did when I was 7 right now, and it would mean something. And so it doesn't matter how long the time that has passed. It matters that you acknowledge harm caused and take responsibility for your role in that and not be shaming or blaming in that repair moment. But I also think about repairing with ourselves as parents. And that's with the self-compassion, right? I don't know if you know about who Kristen Neff is, but Kristen Neff talks a lot about self-compassion. And she talks about it having 3 components: mindfulness, self-kindness, and common humanity, right? So the mindfulness is just noticing, like, what am I feeling inside? Some shame, some guilt, right? And then the self-kindness is showing yourself kindness that you're feeling that shame or that guilt, or that you've done something that resulted in shame and guilt. You're a human person. That's the common humanity part. Like, there's humans all over the world who have done the same thing that you did, who have felt the same things that you were feeling. That's part of the human experience, right? And that is that idea of self-compassion. And, another thing I used to do when my toddler was small was, when I was frustrated, the idea that there's a parent somewhere in the world right at this exact moment who is dealing with exactly what I am dealing with. And I would feel like solidarity with that person. I'd be like, oh, parenting, man. And I would just think of like a strange parent in the world who too was having a child purposely drop blueberries on the ground. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I'm not the only one. And that would make me feel so much better and so much calmer.
A lot of parents, especially moms, do a really good job of taking care of everybody but themselves. And I love that idea of trying to connect with this imaginary parent somewhere in the world and imagine supporting them, because it's really a way to support yourself.
I know it's not just me. Parenting can sometimes be hard. We're all going to make it through. I would just like talk to myself a lot with a kind voice, a kind of like non-judgmental, like solidarity and validating voice. Because parenting is hard, and we are imperfect beings, and we are going to mess up. Like, our kids just need us to be good enough, not perfect. There has to be acknowledgement of the harm caused. I'm sorry I did that. My actions may have caused these feelings in you. right? And be validating when if they come back and say they have blamings of you. You shouldn't have done this, mom. You shouldn't have said it this way. And we just validate all those things. We just say, you're right. Like, I can see how you would see it that way. I understand that that's your experience. I'm sorry about that. This is what I wish I would have done or should have done. This is what I will do next time. And what else do you want to tell me about how this has impacted you? Like, that is what a real repair is, right? I love you. The relationship with you is important to me. Like, that is what the child should walk away with, there's no blaming or rehashing of what happened in terms of the child's behavior in that conversation. Like, if we want to talk about, what should we both do next time so that this goes better? You can do that, but not before doing all that other stuff first, right? Like, not before like hearing the child out themselves, really understanding the impact of what your actions were on them if they're willing to talk about that, and validating that, and then you can get to like the sort of proactive problem solving for next time.
Some parents might say, sure, people go through stuff. I went through stuff and I turned out fine. Why do I need to change? How do you respond to that?
If a parent coming to me is saying this, right, like they're having some issue in the parent-child relationship, and I think to myself, like, is that fine? Right? Is that fine with you? Like, if, you know what I mean? Like, and also if you're yelling or if you're sort of behaving from those fight or flight places on a regular basis, like not just, every once in a blue moon kind of thing, but like on a regular, like that is your strategy on a regular basis. Like, I don't call that fine. I challenge that a little bit. Like, is it really fine? And I also like to sort of help parents think about, like, when that happened to you, like, what did it feel like to you? Right. And parents are usually very good at saying, like, it felt, silencing or scary or painful or something like this. Right. And it's sort of like, is that what you want your child to think about when they're 30 years old and thinking back on your relationship? Is that what you want them to describe their relationship with you as scary, as painful, as something they wanted to escape, or something that they wanted to, get distance from? Eventually kids are going to have a choice about whether or not they want to spend time with you. And do you want them to choose it, like, voluntarily to spend time with you?
Yeah, that's a good question. How do we want our kids to feel about spending time with us when they're grown up?
Like, I know that my parents did, and it was hard for me, when I was a young adult, when I had the choice. It was like, doesn't feel so great, doesn't feel so hot, and that's so sad for all of you sacrifice and all the things that you do for this child to get this child to adulthood. It seems like it would be a lovely future for you, that you could have a connection with them, that they voluntarily wanted to spend time with you when they were adults, when they can choose whether or not to do it. And so I do think about that, because I don't know if that's fine. Do you love being with your parents now? Like, I sometimes challenge people about that word fine, right? And, but I get it. I get why people sort of, it's not really about vilifying your parents. Like, they're people too, right? They behave toward you, even if it were in ways that were hurtful or unhelpful. They're just people too. And they are people who were behaving from their own shark music, right? Not everybody is able to overcome their shark music. We can hold both things at the same time. We can hold that your parents are people too, who are imperfect beings, who had hurts themselves, and also their behavior may not have been okay. And like, those two things can be true at the same time. And that could be true of us as well, right? Just like it was true of your parents. Like, we can be, generally benevolent humans who make parenting mistakes that have impact that last,
Yeah. So our kids are a challenge. So for that parent who feels constantly overwhelmed, constantly triggered, where can they even begin? Do you know?
They start with a single step, right? Like, you got to start at the beginning. Like, one of the reasons I started my practice was because of Janet Lansbury. She would sort of give examples of say this to children when this happens, or say that. And I would think, like, but I'm so triggered. Like, how am I going to use that voice? What are you talking about? It's like exactly what you're saying, right? Like, how am I going to do that? And I was like, I think parents need to like a remedial step of this, like, that's like very lofty, how are we going to get there? And so, yeah, starting at the beginning, right? You have to first notice that you are triggered at all, right? Like, it's like starts with the noticing. Sometimes you can't change anything, but you can come back next week if you're in my practice, and you come back next week and say, oh, I noticed that I got triggered at this time and at that time and at this time and at that time, right? This is what was happening. You just start noticing yourself from the outside, right? We're just saying, notice when it happens. I would like you to come back and tell me as many times as you can remember. And sometimes, parents can write it down. They can use their voice notes app, whatever it is, but just notice when it happens. Like, that's really the first step, because you can't do anything about anything until you understand when the problem occurs, right? So if someone says I'm triggered all the time, I'm like, okay, well, tell me about the last time. And let's do a deep dive on that one time. And if we can just wrap our minds around a single time, like, what's a common one that happens like every single day? Let's just start with that one thing, and we just work with that. And the noticing, I swear, like, just noticing has an impact, because if your only job for this next week is to notice when you are triggered, right? Just the noticing often reduces it. Just the noticing. Because when you become present to what's happening, you're less on autopilot. And the more mindful you can be as a parent, the more choices you can make about what to do, because it's hard to be mindful if you're flying off the handle. So if you are noticing yourself from the outside, you're less likely to fly off the handle, because you're in notice mode, you're in observing mode, and you make different choices from the observing mode. By the time my kid was 5, I was much better at it, right? My kid was a big kicker, hitter, kind of like lots of physical acting out. There was a lot of kicking and hitting from 3 to 6, and by the time my kid was 5, I could really just, in a very calm way, I could like wrap my arms very gently around them, sometimes legs too, and very calmly be like, listen, like, I cannot allow you to hit me. I will not allow you to hit me. Let me know when you're done hitting and kicking, and I can let you go. Right. And I wouldn't even be yelling. It was just a very calm. I was so used to doing it. It happened several times a week. Right. So that I just became so used to basically saying like the same 3 or 4 sentences every single time. I didn't have to think about it or practice anymore. It was like happening all the time. I'm not going to let you hit me. I won't let you do that. Let me know when you're done. I can let you go.
People talk about self-regulation and parenting, but what role does it play, and what does it actually look like when it's working?
If you can make your exhales longer than your inhales, that tells your amygdala that there's no danger. If you have time to like breathe on purpose, then your amygdala knows that you must not be running from a tiger, because you would not have time to do that. So your frontal lobe like comes back online again, and you can make more choices. I'm not going to say any words, so that my body would calm down and my heart would stop racing so much. And that would really help.
I imagine that there are some parents, maybe a lot of them, that say, this sounds great, but I don't have time for self-reflection. I'm just trying to survive today. What do you say to them?
I guess what I wanted to sort of touch on was the idea of that rule of thirds, right? Like this idea that 30% of the time we may purposefully not meet our child's needs because we have a competing obligation. And so we are purposely sort of putting our kid on pause so we can do something else. Then there's 30% of the time that we are trying to meet the need, but we're misattuned somehow. We're not really hitting the mark, but we've tried. And then the 30% of the time that we're getting it right, and that we're like, I see the need and I'm meeting it in a way that is helpful for you, right? And the rest of the time, in all of those times, like those two sort of purposeful and non-purposeful times, like we can be repairing, right? We can just be saying like, oh, it seems I didn't quite get it, so sorry about that. Or like, wow, I really messed up and I'm so sorry about that, right? Like we can just be circling back, right? And when you make that a practice, it becomes easier to do. A lot of parents, sometimes the shame that parents can stop them from going back and making repair, sort of thinking like, if I don't say anything about it, maybe it just sort of didn't happen and I can just, here's some ice cream, right? But like, that's not going to do it. That's not going to do it. Your child remembers, your child still has pain from that. And you can help them with that pain by taking accountability, right? So that's what I sort of think about in terms of good enough parenting. Good enough parenting has like like lots and lots of repair, right? So as long as you're circling back, there's like really nothing. I mean, certainly you're trying all the time not to do irrevocable harm, but you're going to just accidentally sometimes, you know what I mean? And sometimes you're overwhelmed and you're going to just behave in ways you wish you hadn't. And if you can be self-compassionate with yourself, that is going to go a long way in making it easier to go back and repair. And so I just sort of encourage all parents to reach for that good enough piece, right? That good enough means I'm trying and I'm also human, you know? Like, and as long as your kid knows you're trying, like that goes a huge, long way, you know?
Dr. Nanika Coor, thank you so much for joining us today. And for our viewers or listeners who want to go a little bit deeper, where can they find more of your work?
Thank you. It's been an honor to be here and have a chat with you. Yeah, you can go to my Instagram page. It's at BK Parents, at BKPARENTS. And then my website, www.brooklynparenttherapy.com. Those are the best places to find me. And of course, Project Parenthood.
Parenting a neurodivergent or special needs child can feel heavy, but you don't have to carry it all. Some of that weight isn't even yours, and letting go of it makes space for connection, compassion, and choice. If this conversation with Dr. Coor helped you to set something down, please take a moment to like and subscribe to this video. It helps more parents like us find these conversations, and it keeps our community growing. And remember what Dr. Coor said, you don't have to be perfect. Good enough parenting rooted in repair and self-compassion is more than enough. Together, we're figuring it out one step at a time. You're not alone. We'll meet you there.